No, but I definitely agree.
Chris took an
Alright,
immediate
so
and
I guess
deep
we kind of hit a point to where I should probably read our first
Who
little
the
joke
hell
here.
did this Thomas think he
Okay.
was?
Who are we giving the first one to?
Let me go. Let me see. Well, the first one we submitted was, I think, a little bit technical, but I kind of liked it. The Twitter handle for this guy's name is Blake Finks, and he goes,
It wasn't the high
"What do you
jump,
get
but
when you cross a
he held his
vector
own.
with a mountain climber?"
Not even being graceful at times.
Nothing. A mountain climber is a scalar.
Actually,
Oh.
you know, fine.
We have some
That
really
skinny little
nerdy
runt leaping about like he owned the place.
readers.
I know, that was a very, very,
I love
technical
it.
joke.
I'm a huge nerd and I love it, but we have some nerdy people following us.
So that was a really cool
In
one.
the best way. I love our listeners.
Well, so congratulations, Blake Finks. You
Congratulations.
get our first code. So if you're not here in the live stream, we'll tweet you tomorrow and you can claim your code here.
And if you're not in the live stream, why not? Why are you not in the live stream?
So we started talking about the permanence of games. We kind of ignored the first few levels, but
Yeah, we ignored the big thing that Thomas, he was alone. That's a fairly important thing. And then he met Chris, who is... Well, he has a bit of a Napoleon complex, and he really doesn't like Thomas, because Thomas can jump. And Chris is not very good at that.
yeah, I don't know what about that is so endearing, I guess. So it's like, oh, I totally know who the shape is.
Well,
I could totally relate to the shape in some way.
it's very much like an underdog thing, I think. It's right from the beginning, it's...
What would it do?
He...
What new opportunity might this
This is going to sound weird to say, and we've talked to Mike on the podcast about this before, that it wasn't necessarily intentional, but I look at Chris and instantly I think he's short and fat compared to Thomas.
No, I totally thought the same way.
I assume that the shape of his quadrilateral is physical properties to a person, and I'm just looking at him as this short, fat underdog that just desperately wants to be as good as the tall, skinny, I can do everything person that he's been paired with.
It's like the perfect foil, I guess, to Thomas.
Yeah.
And the funny part is, like, I don't think, one of our chatters said Chris is me.
Because
Oh.
Well, I'm not sure in what way you're Chris. Like, I hope,
Little Red seemed fine.
well,
happy to be on his merry
Yeah, I don't
personality-wise,
I don't think there's a good way you can end that sentence, Jose. I think you need to stop
yeah,
that.
I'm sorry. Like, if you have a Napoleon complex, like, I guess I could understand.
I hope that this is someone in the chat that has played the game before and knows of all the wonderful qualities Chris is going to present as the game goes along, and as such is referring to those qualities.
He says open to interpretation, so I'm going to assume you're a very fit person, and not short and fat.
I think you're digging a bit of a hole here.
Stared at Thomas.
I know, I'm sorry, I did that terribly.
He
Feel-
seemed
it's like when we
very
had-
happy at their situation. Friends together, a brave fellowship
He said,
of
I said, this
quadrilaterals
is
on a quest for
probably my
greatness.
favorite game ever. So I guess let's ask the person in the chat. I mean, what did you really like about this game? Kind of,
Observation
why
that
did
Thomas
it,
was doing
why
was
is it one of your
greatest.
favorite games?
Every time they
Well,
saw
I
something
know for me
vaguely
it's
new, Chris
just
would hear a
the story is so heartwarming, and I just like the fact that it's not a difficult game to play. It's just it's a game that I can play and
for
just
a few levels.
relax a bit.
It's really simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't
It's not-
take too much challenge to do. I can just sort of, relax and enjoy a nice story, which sometimes that's all you really want to do.
You like the kind of the approachable mechanics, I guess. Game mechanics, which is kind of what you were talking about. Like, it's really
Yeah.
approachable.
It's a game that like I can share it with my non-gaming friends and family, and they can enjoy the story and not get frustrated by how impossibly hard games can be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think those kinds of games also have their place where they're possibly hard. talking to you, right? Super Meat Boy or Spelunky or something like that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he said that the story was genuinely touching, and I definitely thought so too. It was kind of a dual thing. It was like the analytical part of me was like, why am I feeling these things about like shapes that are walking around? Then I'm like, it makes total sense. Like if you're playing the game, like I felt really dumb trying to describe this game and like why it's like so like
They just feel like so much more than just shapes, and it's lovely.
Yeah. And I think part of that is like you said, the ambiance and kind of who's narrating it. And, it's like if you think about it from like a storytelling kind of standpoint, it's a lot of like telling, right? It's not a lot of showing, because you kind of have to tell people, but it's still
it breaks one of the big rules of storytelling, which is that you're supposed to show and not tell where possible, but it somehow makes it work.
And so, like, I haven't found like an appropriate way to describe that, or like why it does that.
John needed room to show off his
it just does.
exceptional
One
style.
thing
you're playing through it.
One thing that I think it does really well is just
the wrong
that
side of his
because
little dot
each of
things.
the characters is so different and
Where'd
has
they come
such a
from, anyway?
different sort of, they all have their core character flaws, as it were, of like the one thing that they're afraid of and that gets them personally. And I think that like there is probably a character in this game for everyone, or for at least most people, that they can relate to and be like, oh yes, I have those same fears, I have those same
John
insecurities,
inhaled the air of the open
I have those
space.
same sort of,
It smelled
things going on.
awesome.
See, John's my guy. I love John.
Time to
John's my
flex
favorite
those
guy.
muscles to
This
put
is
his
gonna
training
sound
to
this is gonna
use
sound like
time
I'm saying
to
it just
show
because
those
of the
little
name, but
dots how
I
it was
feel
done.
that for Laura
Oh,
when we
really?
get to her.
Decided
Yeah,
to
which
press
is
the switch
really
to
nice
let the little
that
dots
it
catch
worked
up
out
with
that
him.
way.
John cared for his new allies.
People named Laura are relatable to people named Laura. That's very
Is
appropriate.
that just a general
in the
rule?
mirror
It's
all
not
these
just
years.
this example.
Our chat person really liked Claire.
Oh, Claire is the best. Claire is wonderful. I can't wait till we get to Claire.
Said no offense, Laura.
Oh, it's fine. I think Claire's the best written character in this, and she gets the best dialogue.
And so we've talked a lot before, I guess, more likely to be written about Mike Bickle's new game Volume, but like I think it's really interesting how different it is from this one, or just like the mechanics and kind of the way it looks and like what it's going for.
It is. I definitely get the feeling that story-wise we're going to see a similarly invocative story. But mechanic-wise, it is very, very different, and I'm glad to see that. That my initial fear after playing this was that while this works, I don't know how well it would work for a second or a third.
Yeah, you could. I don't know if you
Something
could
like
do Thomas Was Alone like 2 or 3 or something. Although
not unless you had a very different idea, gameplay-wise or story-wise, to sort of justify its existence, I think.
you were mentioning how you could show this game to kids and stuff, and how each character represents a different insecurity or fear in people. Like, I think that would be a great thing to teach to kids, or kind of help them understand those kinds of things.
Yeah, definitely. The only thing that I think is a little bit of a shame is that while this is sort of easy enough to, well, I'm trying to think of the right way to put it. The game is definitely easier than a lot of games to play, but it might still be too difficult to
John
play
was
for
happy to keep helping. He
some
felt it was important to his
children
image
that
he
I
was
would
seen
like
to
to share
help
the
the
story
little
with.
guys.
I don't know. Yeah. But again,
How old do you think somebody would have to be, I guess, to...
I don't know. You tell me. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea either, so...
Yeah, it's difficult. it's definitely a game that I guess you could probably play it with a child sat alongside you for a young aged child anyway, and just have them
I
watch
think-
along with the story.
Yeah, and kind of listen to it and like have it be more like a bedtime story or something like that. I think I'd
Yeah.
still be interested in it.
Yeah, I think it does make a really nice bedtime story type tale. On that note, while we're here, everyone should go play Castles in the Sky, because it's like the sweetest bedtime story for children ever.
Yeah, that's the one that Chris did a preview for, like one of our contributors, right?
Yeah, I did a live stream as well at some point recently. It's just this really sweet bedtime story that going back to your point about the permanence of games, I think again that's another one that will definitely have some permanence, and people will be able to come back to that have enjoyed it and show their children and be like, oh look, it's this thing we can now enjoy together because it's sweet.
Which is why I think this is like a really interesting time to be getting into video games or getting into them, because there are so many of them that are doing some really different things or trying a lot of different stuff. Like it's not like you can. I think you can always find a game for you, like if you look for it hard enough.
Yeah, and this is definitely like it's the golden age to be a gamer.
No, I agree.
There's never been a better time, I think.
He
And,
didn't mind them so much either.
Mhm.
The red one.
Yeah,
I think it's
Thomas,
only going to get better.
had a charming way of
I
applauding
definitely
every time
agree.
Jack jumped.
I think people complain about games becoming more accessible, but there has never been a better time for just there is a game for everyone and everyone can find a game.
Well, like, in some ways, I think there are two different kinds of accessibility, right? Like, is it the technology? Is it the console? Can it do all the different things? Like in that way. And is there a platform for it? And another is like gameplay-wise, is it accessible in that way? Story-wise, is it something that everybody would be able to relate to? And I think on the second point, like, there's a lot more of that. Like, there's a lot more people trying to do those kind of things.
Yeah, and the best reason I can guess for that is there's this lovely thing, and I keep talking about it in panels, about how game development's becoming more accessible as well.
And that's totally part of it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's this whole thing that if you lower the barrier of entry to an art form and make it easier for people to tell their own stories,
Angry
like
orange one
with
was
indie
less
gaming at the
immediately
moment,
likable, but
it means that you'll get more people telling
used
the
well.
stories they want to tell, and like telling stories that wouldn't necessarily be made in a AAA space. And it just means that you start getting more of these experiences that take a little bit of a risk and just provide something that you wouldn't have seen before, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's like, there's always going to be a place for those GTA type games or Bioshock or you've gone to Soul, like all the games you've ever heard of, but there's also a place for games like this one and kind of smaller titles like this, which are which also do great themselves.
Yeah. Oh.
This was interesting. A floating target.
All right, let's read
This
one
would
more of these
require
jokes. Huh?
Coordination, balance, and timing.
All right, here's a good one. The second one, this guy's handle is called
He was
That
happy to
Satanic
guide them to
Pony.
triumph.
Oh, lovely.
I know, right? And their joke today was, I thought getting drunk would help me come up with an original pun, but it turned out there's no rect angle to be found.
That's
See, that one's not quite as nerdy as the other one.
no, that's it's fine. It still works with my journalism-y sensibilities, as I am obviously a raging alcoholic, because you have to be to want to review video games for a living.
But yes, I guess that one works as well. And so, as we've been progressing through this game, I thought one of the things that it did was it really, the difficulty didn't ramp up too much. Like where it, like it spends a lot of time kind of teaching you without telling you what to do. Like as the levels progress, it's teaching you like where you need to jump and like how to coordinate between like all your
Yeah.
different shapes. And I just thought it was a really well designed game that way.
Definitely, and I think there's also there's never any real risk to death
Maybe that's what the
when
dots
you're
were
trying to
for.
learn how to do
They were
things.
there to extend
It's
John's
you've got
reach,
lots of room to
make this
experiment and to
performance
learn what you're
even more
doing
impressive.
without ever having to worry
John
about,
liked the thought.
if I mess this up, I'm going to have to go back 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, no, that'd be totally frustrating.